Welcome to the Get Safe Guardian Perspective podcast, where we sit down with first responders, military veterans, entrepreneurs, and anyone that has an eye towards safeguarding their space. Today, we have Chief of Police in Winchester, Virginia, Amanda Behan. She has an AA in Paralegal Studies, a BS in Criminal Justice with the concentration in Business Management, and an MA in Executive Leadership. She is the first female Chief of Police in Winchester. She's on the board of directors for the IACP, and her focus as a chief has been on building stronger communities. Now, before I bring her in, I need to bring attention to, I need to mention that today's episode is sponsored by Get Safe. Through communication and connection, we can achieve safety. We are the one-stop shop for violence prevention, personal safety, and de-escalation, regardless of the industry. When our guests are law enforcement, we like to showcase our crisis intervention and de-escalation course. It is an 8 hours of dynamic, hands-on training that encourages officer wellness, critical thinking, and tactical decision-making, all while learning about mental illness, intellectual disabilities like autism, and other types of crises cops might find themselves responding to. This course is free to law enforcement agencies because of a grant funded through the COPS office of the DOJ. And we don't want a budget to stand between high-speed, low-drag training and your agency. This course costs you absolutely nothing. So give us an email at lawenforcement@getsafeusa.com or contact us through our website at getsafeusa.com or getsafeuniversity.com. Remember, in order to be safe, you need Get Safe to stay safe. All right. And that's why we don't do these things live. Chief, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Thank you.
So tell me about yourself. How long you been in law enforcement?
Yeah, so I entered the profession in 2001. I started my career after college as a paralegal, and I had some really great experiences. And I worked also for a victim witness program and worked closely with law enforcement during that time as a victim advocate. So that was my first insight into the profession. And as I moved more into the paralegal career, I just found that I wasn't satisfied. I didn't feel like that I was making a difference in the world. So thinking back on my time with victim witness, I thought, I should give law enforcement a try. So in January 2001, that's what I did, and I have been in Winchester my entire life, and it's a beautiful community. Now it is. When I entered the profession, it was much different. It was much different. So I'm happy to be a part of the city and watch it come from where it was to where it is now. It's beautiful. It's vibrant. The community is engaged, and this is now 23 years. And I am just excited to have my entire career here.
That's awesome. So you like that's a really a start to finish. Not to say that your career is over once you're done with the chief of police in Winchester, but what happened to make the change from where it was to where it is?
We have had a lot of different things change over the years. First and foremost, you have to look at local government and the council members who had been in government for probably too long, and probably the managers that had been around too long and that weren't committed to advancing the city. Not to say they weren't great leaders, they certainly were, but we really needed to focus on some of the areas that we were just seeing large amounts of crack cocaine being sold, especially in open air. And so early in my career, I was able to serve on our Northwest Regional Drug Task Force, which encompasses our city and several surrounding counties. And so I was able to see really firsthand just how many people within our community were affected by drugs. And as we started to really make an emphasis on that, and the city started to take a direction in really, really revitalizing our downtown area, and then continue to have it spread from the inner part of our city to the outer part of our city. And it's just absolutely incredible, the transformation. I'm so proud to be here and to see where we used to be and now where we are.
That's great. We always tell cops when we're out in front of them, teaching is like, cops hate two things: change and the way things are. And it sounds like that's not a cop thing. It sounds just like it's like maybe a government thing or a people thing,
Right.
because it does. People do not like change. They do not want to consider alternative perspectives or a different way of doing things because it's scary. It's the
Right.
but for a long time, the Get Safe mantra was changing mindsets, changing outcomes. And that is exactly what you've been doing to make your community better. Now, building stronger communities, that's the catalyst. That was the thing that when I Google searched you, that was the thing that popped up of what your, foundational components are. What are some of the things that you're doing to build stronger communities?
Yeah, and I appreciate that because certainly the community is my number one priority, and I do want to focus on the fact that when I first came into the position, I really reflected on who we are as an agency and what meant the most to me. And so I created a value statement in which it identified how community forward we were, but we were also employee focused because I think that those two things go hand in hand. If I don't have happy employees, they're not going to best serve my community, our community. And so that was an important component to making sure that we had strong community ties and support. And we really have come a long way. I had the former chief gave me an opportunity to have me develop a community outreach program. At the time, I was a lieutenant, and we were creating new events, and we were in every part of our city, and we were hitting different age groups, different parts of the city. It was incredible what we were doing, and then COVID hit. So we had to be more creative in how we were doing that. And we found creative ways to do that. And I think it comes back to what you were saying about police officers and how difficult change is. And I have always been a person that I have a creative brain. And it's been great to be able to bring that creative brain into the profession and convince others that change is okay. I have had strong support among the employees as we do different outreach events. And I'd like to talk about how far we have come with that. Because of those, we have developed strong relationships with our civic organizations, a close relationship with our NAACP. They partner with us on several events. We work alongside our entire city team and come together just, last week or the week prior to, we cleaned up the Timbrook Park, which is located across from our building. Both the building and the park are named for Sergeant Ricky Timbrook, who lost his life in 1999. And so we went to the park, we brought out community members and people from the city, and we picked up trash, we played basketball, we had demonstrations. It was just such an incredible time. And we had a really great turnout. But I think it's just because we have developed such strong relationships with so many groups that have really instilled a level of trust, but also our employees feel strongly supported.
Um, Now that's great that you've got these relationships. Do you have any um, confrontational groups within your community that are outspoken against the police department?
So we are fortunate in that after the murder of George Floyd, we worked closely with protesters who were planning a walk and a protest in our area. And we helped them to fill out permits, and we worked alongside them to find best locations. We provided safety during this time. And even during that time, we had strong support. Yes, there were people that participated that didn't like law enforcement. We saw their signs, but the organizers, the first people that they thanked when they went on stage was the Winchester Police Department. And I can't tell you how emotional that made me feel at that time. And since then, we just continue to grow our relationships stronger as much as we can. And we see that in the outpouring of donations that we have coming in and the people waving or saying thank you for what we do.
Great. How many officers do you have in your agency?
We are 80 sworn.
And specialty units?
Yeah, so I would like to talk about one specifically since we're on the topic of, community support. And we started an addiction response unit. And that was shortly after I became chief. And, addiction affects everyone, including myself. I have family members who have lost their lives. I have family members who are in recovery. And we all know in law enforcement that we can't arrest our way out of it. So I wanted to have a unit that focused specifically on those who were really struggling and what resources could we provide them with. And so I have an officer who serves on this unit, and we're hoping to grow it even more. But this year I was able to bring on a peer recovery specialist. This person had graduated from our recovery court program. And after graduation, she went through 400 hours of interning and learning how to be a peer recovery specialist. And so she has been in recovery for many years now, and she has done so much work by being able to be relatable to our community members who are struggling. We've been able to get them in detox, into treatment, and even provide clothing and places to stay. It's just, I am very proud of the work that they are doing. And they are a part of our community resources team. And that team is full-time, and they are our problem solvers. So if we have something going on, they're going to be creative. They're going to, it's going to be a priority for them. And I love having them, because if we have something that comes up, they just jump on it immediately and our go-to. So we have the typical investigations division, patrol division, but mostly it's the community resources team that is geared towards our building our relationships. However, the employees know that every interaction with someone is a possibility that it could hamper our support. And we have a very comprehensive use of force review in our agency. And in fact, as I was getting ready for this, for us to talk, I was reviewing one, and the amount of restraint that the officers here have, and the professionalism that they displayed, even when they are, being cursed at or being fought with. And I'm just completely proud. And the review that I was just going over was one such example.
That's great. I had a thought I wanted to ask you about. I'll come back to it in a minute. Looking at it, so you have 88 officers, 80 officers, a couple different specialty units besides or beyond the traditional patrol and investigations. It seems like you've got community support. So we have, in the past, we have a Bridge the Divide program where we go and we actually help facilitate discussions between law enforcement and the communities when there isn't that bond, whether it's acts of that the community didn't understand that the police did, or the police, in one case, there was an officer that had been arrested for some things that were pretty bad. And the community had lost trust. So we come in and we kind of help facilitate the healing process by opening up lines of communication in a equal format. So like, I'm going to talk to you about because I was a cop for 13 years. I started in 2008 and I ended in 2021. And I said, this is what you need to know about law enforcement. This is what they can do. This is what they can't do. This is the scope of the job. Right. And then they would say, okay, I understand. Now this is what happened. And then the police come in and say, this is what happened from our side. And it's really just mediation. And what would you say to a community or a police chief or a police department that has got a black eye and is trying desperately to rebuild that trust with the community? But what would you say to them this is best practices in reestablishing that line of trust without making it feel, I don't know, hokey or forced?
Right. Transparency, of course, everybody uses that word, but it is so important. I'm proud of what we have done in those efforts by providing the public with our policies, and our reports on our annual use of force, our reports on our annual complaints that come in. So it's anything that you can put out there to the community is so important. We provide data on, our traffic stops, our arrests, and how they relate to age and race. And it really just gives people, that's how you can show that we can be trusted. Because if you are showing that your population is this with Black persons in your community, and then when you look at the rest that have happened, are they equal in population? So those are things that are really important for the community members to see. So really, I think transparency is first and foremost. But anytime there is an issue, you have to get ahead of it immediately. Saying no comment or not providing information just leads to people coming up with their own stories. And I'll give an example of how we achieved something recently. I have a very close relationship with the president of our local IACP, and he had received a complaint. His board members had received a complaint about an incident of what they felt was excessive use of force. They were shown a 20-second video, and from that 20-second video, I could see why maybe a conclusion could be drawn. So I made arrangements to meet with him and the board as soon as possible, and I reviewed the body-worn camera footage, and I sat down with them, and I didn't say anything. I showed the whole entire video to them, and at the very end, they sat in silence, and they were just in awe of the restraint and professionalism displayed by the officers. So I think that is so important. If the laws allow you to be able to do that, to be able to show that footage raw like it was, and certainly not every incident you're going to be able to do that with, but it really even that one incident strengthened that relationship even more.
Okay. That's I had somebody else on last week, and we had a very similar conversation about like how many people take 20 seconds of video without context and jump to conclusions, when the reality is, like, if you were to, I don't know, show more information, this is the totality of the circumstances, how much understanding would occur in that event. Now, just real quick transition over. You are on the IACP board.
Yes.
So what do you have is it an at-large, a general role? Do you have a specific role there? And what is the IACP for those that don't know?
Sure. So I have a general role. I'm one of the board members that are there. There's also an executive board, and they are the true leadership of the IACP. I feel incredibly grateful for being a part of the board, which was started in January. And I actually am getting ready to leave tomorrow to head to Utah, where we're going to have another board meeting. So I'm super excited to travel across the country for that. But the IACP encompasses so much. They will put out a statement in reference to the unfortunate incident that happened this week, in which a law enforcement officer was murdered. We also have best practices policy model policies that can be used. We hold an annual conference where you can see what the latest and greatest is in law enforcement technology, and the list could go on and on about what they do, but the leadership that is there is incredible. It's absolutely incredible, and for me to be a part of that just is something that it has to be at the top of my list as far as accomplishments, for sure.
We, I believe last year, or maybe the year before, the IACP was the training authority for the Kevin and Avante grant that's issued through the DOJ, which, for those that don't know, Kevin and Avante are two individuals that had intellectual disabilities that ultimately lost their life because of elopement behavior. Get Safe is one of the trainers that is authorized to go and teach law enforcement and civilian personnel how to prevent elopement and then recover missing persons, but using best practices specific to those that have intellectual developmental disabilities like autism, because there's markers that happen. So we've had a relationship with them. I think they passed that TA authority on to somebody else at this point, but I think there's a great organization. They do a lot of good work.
And you bring up training, and that's so important because they do have conferences
Yeah.
all over the country. And a really strong focus right now is on officer wellness. And I'm so grateful for that. Because we are seeing the impacts, the alarming impacts that the profession has on
Oh, yeah.
us.
And it's not even recent information. Like you look at the last 10 years. So that's actually how we start our course is we spend not a laughable, but a significant amount of time talking about, hey, look, in the last 10 years, a cop is more likely to die at their own hand than by felonious assault. So
Correct.
let's walk this back and look at how you have self-awareness, how you're prepping to get into the job that day, your shift, how you're handling things at home, what are your stress management techniques, what are the things that you're doing to stay grounded and well. To the point to not to bash on firefighters, but there were as a firefighter in the room, and he said, "You guys spend too much time on officer wellness." I'm like, well, sorry, it's important.
We don't get to PT on the job
No, we
like
don't.
the fire department.
We don't get around to have family dinner after work every day or during the shift. So it's and it's shocking to me because I was on the peer support team. I was an assistant supervisor for it. And it was just how much stuff that like the numbers are staggering
Mhm.
that we have not taken care. And it's not like a newer generation of weaker cops. What it is it's just generational like baggage that just gets dumped in because cops hate the way the things are and they hate change. So as soon as you start to implement change and you start to say, hey, I understand you have a calling, but this is just a job. It
Right.
offends people. No, this is I bleed blue. Okay, to you, sir, that bleeds blue. Let's say this. You fall out of the shower and hurt your back. Non-work related injury. You can't be a cop anymore because now you can't carry the duty vest, you can't sit in the car. What are you going to do with the rest of your life?
Hmm. Absolutely.
Because your
That,
calling is now gone.
yeah, I'm sorry.
No.
That's one of the first things that I do when we bring in new officers is give them some advice that was given to me when I was in the academy. And the person who did this is still a mentor to me today. But he said, never lose sight of who you were when you came into the profession. Remember your values. Keep them in mind. Make sure that you make them a priority and don't let the job change who you are. And I just love that because and it's so true. And I know the people that you're talking about very well.
Yeah. It's interesting this. So Stephanie Kahn, she's out of Oregon, I think, wrote a great book like Resiliency for First Responders and Police. She's a great background in first responder world, but she's a psychologist and she talks about these things and she lays down 3 areas that are of stress that you have to categorize. And so we went and audited the police department and said, all right, let's peer support team. When people come to you, I just want you to send me a report with, was it this, this, or this? So I want to see what, kind of what is causing the spikes in the baseline. And it's on the street stress, in the building stress, and like non-work
Like,
related stuff, right?
yeah.
Shockingly, on the street stress was the lowest number of complaints, and in the building stress was the highest. So it's like peer to peer communication, peer to supervisor communication, internal affairs investigations, admin, management, city council, all of the things that are internal that you have no control over were causing the higher levels of escalation than anything else.
Yeah. So it's interesting that you bring that up because, when we first started talking, I told you how important it was that I wanted to show my employees that I cared about them. And sometimes it's the little things that you do. I, took spaces within the department and made them more inviting and welcoming. So I have a lounge that I created, and I have a limited budget. And when I came in, it was already in a new budget year, so I used furniture that I had to create a lounge that has coffee, and you can just casually sit and talk. In fact, that's where I try to do this 3 to 4 times a year, but I will bring all the shifts in individually and just sit down and chat with them. And we'll talk about personal things and what's going on outside, what's going on with local government and that sort of thing. And it just gives them a more comforting space, and just like their area where they come in for briefing and breaks and things, like just doing little touches to things does go a long way. But you're so right about the communication piece. What's coming down from the top and how is it being communicated can destroy an agency. And then certainly there was one point in which we faced that. But yeah, it's so important, so important.
Yeah, I hate to kill this train of thought, but there was something that I meant to say earlier, and I want to go back to it just briefly, and then I want to go back to the sorry, I'm all over the map sometimes. Community outreach. And it actually lines up with training too. So as a school resource officer, we would spend summer school teaching. They would give us a topic. Like one year it was talk about sex, drugs, and poor choices, which we turn into critical thinking and perception. What is perception? What is critical thinking? Like being able to analyze information and making your own decision based on what you're seeing and what you know versus what you're being told. So that was one year. Then the next year we did, what are your rights? Because we see that a lot of kids are always like, I know my rights. Cool. All right. Name 3. And they're like, well, I don't know. Like, that's what I thought. So then we would go over, we would talk about, the big ones, search and seizure, First Amendment, Second Amendment, things like just touch on the first 5 or 6. And then we would show videos of incidents gone, and we'd stop it before it hit a certain point. And we would say, let's talk about this. What happened? And then, it would first start off with, oh, the police are bad because of this, that, and the other. Great. This is what you saw. That's that 20 seconds. Now let's expand the video and show you the whole thing. What truly happened here? And then you would start to see a change in mindset of like, oh, there is more information out there to be sought after. There is more information that I didn't have, that had I known that, I might have had a different outlook and I wouldn't have been so enraged by it. So having some emotional control. 2 questions. 1, do you have school resource officers? And 2, if you do or don't, what's out there for your youth demographic to ensure that they have the best information possible when it comes to their rights, civic duty, the ways that police actually work, to educate them on your job.
Okay, so just to give you an idea, we have 4 elementary schools, 1 intermediate and middle school, and then a high school. And so we currently, in the past, we had 1 in the middle school and 1 in the high school. And then we were able to get grants over the past couple of years to be able to have 2 additional that we have in the elementary schools. And so they have the responsibility of covering 2 schools. So we do a lot of different things to engage our youth in the city. We have a junior academy program that starts with the very little ones, age 5 to age 8, I believe, is what the age group is. It's their first introduction. It's a fun introduction into law enforcement. And then the next step is our Kids and Cops camp. It's a week-long camp in which they see all kinds of facets of law enforcement, but they also get to engage in a different way. It's a lot of fun, but there's also some tough questions that get asked. And you have interactions with children who have gone through some of the most horrendous things, and their level of resilience it puts me in awe often. And then after that, we have the teen academy. So we try to engage on the community level as much as possible in the schools itself. We are just bringing back the DARE program. I believe very strongly in that program, and the city hasn't had it for, I believe, 15 years or more. I'm excited to bring that back, and I have the best resource officers in the school. I can't tell you, going out into the community, how many compliments I get from parents. Or, I just walked downstairs this week and a family came in because they made something special for one of the SROs and wanted to let him know he was being thought about over the summertime. So we do the in the school teachings as well, but it's those little interactions that really make a difference.
Yeah, I agree. That's great. I know a lot of cities went away with, like, I was the last SRO, or my partner and I were the last two for the city that we worked at, because it was 2020, and then they just said that we no longer want to invest in this program, so they separated. And then what you saw is the kids were like, "Wait, what happened to our officer friendly? What happened to our resource?"
Yeah.
And like, to this day, similar, I had we now, our city we worked in was a lot more mental health related stuff when it came to kids. We had a very significant issue with adolescent suicide. So either there were weeks, and we worked 410s, where in 4 days you'd have sometimes 10 kids that had active ideation and had to seek treatment. So
Oh my goodness.
it was, but one of those kids, handed me when they got back from the hospital, handed me it's just a stretchy bead bracelet, and said, "Hey, I want to thank you for getting me help." Right. And to this day, it still sits in my car.
Yeah.
And those things stick with you, because those are the pieces that hold you together when things start to fall apart. So
100%.
that is awesome. On to going back into IACP, you're going to Salt Lake City, I'm guessing?
Yes. No, Park City.
Oh,
Yes, our president is the chief there.
I love Park City. Park City is great. It's an incredible place to hold a conference. What are some of the things that, if you can share, that you guys are going to talk about at this conference?
Well, I think that I'm not able to do that because of for confidentiality reasons. I don't want to do that because it's a public meeting,
Okay,
and so I don't want to get myself in any kind of trouble. I'm still a
sure.
newbie, so I'm not sure
No,
if
no,
I
I understand.
can discuss
And
that.
just, this isn't going to go out before your meeting. So,
Yeah,
it's, but I completely understand that. Um,
I am excited about this meeting, though. I wish I knew I had the
sure.
ability to do that because I'm excited.
No, I get that. If you could have it your way, um, what are the top 3 things that you would train every officer in the country on?
Oh, now you're gonna. I think up front, the importance of taking care of yourself
Okay.
has to be because there's not going to be an understanding. And I think that um, having officers tell real stories or having family members tell real stories about the transition of what happens to you during your career and your mental well-being, your physical well-being, I think is really important. Certainly, the safety component of it is a priority. And then I don't know what would be that. That's You stumped me on that one. I apologize. Uh, I don't. I think the last thing that affected so many people is that we fell into a trap of what was being what was being heard on social media, and it let we had really great people leave the profession because they couldn't walk away from social media or what their friends or family members might be saying about law enforcement. I always tell officers that focus on the things that you have control of and not the things that you don't. And I know that those aren't three big training topics, but there's certainly three things that have impacted me the most.
Mm. There's a quote. I don't know who it is. I'm probably gonna butcher it. But it's from one of the Stoics. It says, "You choose to be great. You could choose to be great today, but instead you choose tomorrow." So it's just constant. It's the procrastination of being better. So I think that kind of lines up with what you're saying. I think wellness is a big piece of it. They obviously have a reason for asking that, but I'm of the opinion that we spend a lot of time focusing on hard skills and less time on soft skills. Yet we take for granted that we use soft skills 100% of the time, and we just assume that people know how to communicate. We we see this all the time, just constantly
Mhm.
back and forth, and absent very unique circumstances, most officers aren't going to run traffic stops or intervention calls or domestic violence investigations from their cell phone. They're
Correct.
going to do it face to face and have to read body language. They're going to have to um, use active listening to develop empathy and rapport and then influence that behavior change. They're going to have to use all of the things that they really weren't equipped with. Now, we get to go around the country and talk to cops all over the place, and you'd be shocked at how much effort and attention is given to the skill of communication. So for me, I think wellness definitely needs to be in the top three, but I also I think the ability to communicate and then the understanding of where your authority comes from is hugely important. I it's a little mind numbing to me that officers don't necessarily understand why they can do what they do or how they can do what they do, yet they're still out there doing it. As a chief of police, how do you encourage your officers to improve and get better?
Yeah, we have implemented a training program in which each month we have a different topic that's discussed. And it's all the things that you're saying. And we are focusing on that. And it was, we had one of our officers come in and do a search and seizure. And it was incredible to me to sit in a room with senior officers and young officers who sat in silence when, because they were worried they weren't going to say the right answer. And we need to know that, like this. And so that was eye opening. And so we have really focused on making sure that our officers are confident. They're confident in their supervisors as well.
Yeah, that's we run into that quite a bit where you get the I don't know and I'm afraid to answer because I don't want to be wrong in front of my peers. So and I don't know the plugin, but it's free on PowerPoint. So when you have the slide up, you scan your phone and then it drops you into a live polling and you can be anonymous. And then you answer every question from your phone and it pops up on the screen and nobody knows who you are. And
Yeah.
you see so much more engagement. And you're like, oh, I get it.
Yeah.
I wasn't wrong or I was very wrong, but nobody needs to know that.
Yeah, we have just implemented a program in which we're revamping our policies. And a part of those policies, we are going to be able to train on these topics that are hitting us the most. And that will be a better way of learning and not feeling so, what are they going to think about me? And because it's it's an individual and no one will know.
What specialties did you have coming up through the ranks?
So I started, I worked midnight shift patrol, and I was given an opportunity early on in my career. I went into the drug task force as a detective. And after that, I became a detective in our general investigations division. And I really appreciated the time that I had working in the drug task force, because that's truly where I learned how to develop a rapport. My communication skills were a lot stronger, and I got to work cases in a different way. So after general investigations, I became a sergeant. I spent time back in patrol, and it was very challenging because I was working day shift. And so the officers I had working day shift, I think there were two of them that were my field training officers. They had been there for a long time. Most of my shift had been there for a very long time. And at this point, I'm only 6 years into my career. After that, I became, I was a sergeant in investigations, and then a lieutenant in the chief's office, and then back to patrol. But there's so many things that like little things that I was a part of. I think one of the things there's a couple of things that come to mind is that were special moments in my career. And that was in 2010, we implemented a mandatory fitness program. And, in law enforcement, this is not always easy to accomplish because of fear for getting sued. And, I love the fire department for the fact that they have to have those standards. But in law enforcement, we don't. But we were able to make this happen. It took a very long time, but it has, it's constantly been analyzed over the years, but we still maintain that program today. We just use a different test, but I'm very proud of that, because it really, truly, I watched officers who were unhealthy and not fit, and they listened to what the specialists were saying when we brought them in, and they transformed, and they were happier and better in their jobs. Now, we did lose some officers, but that's what happens when we have to make change. And so I'm very proud of leading that. And we were also able to bring on a therapy dog for our special investigations detective. It was really, some of the stories that came out of that were fantastic. But not only, the dog it wasn't just a dog for our victims. It became more of a peer dog. There was nothing better than having a very difficult day and then having this. He was just so clumsy, and he was a lab, and it was the sweetest thing. It would just brighten your day instantly. So I'm very happy of those. Those are just a couple of examples of things that I've been a part of.
Do you know Mark Lowther?
Hmm.
He's a kind of an old timer out of Ogden, Utah. He was
Okay.
a big time negotiator type. A lot of really interesting guy. He's got his service dog is a reserve peer support dog for Ogden PD, and he's they've had a lot of success with
Yeah.
the dog. So I look, as a dog person, I think that's important to keep them around, because cats don't like people. So
Yeah, so, and we recently expanded our canine program, and just in different aspects of what they do on a daily basis. But it just, even having those types of dogs in your agency really can make your day. So I love it. I love
absolutely.
dogs.
Chief, I appreciate your time. Is there anything that you would like our listeners to know that we haven't covered? Any place that they can go to see what it is that you're doing? Any socials they can follow, or just anything that you want to share? This is your platform to advertise without having to use your budget.
Yeah. No, I'm just incredibly grateful for a career that has, it's definitely had its challenges, both internally, personally, but I wouldn't change a thing. I am just incredibly grateful for all the opportunities that I've had here at our department. We have strong community support. That's evident through our Facebook page. We are a city of only 25,000, but yet we have 50,000 followers. And I'm proud of that. I'm proud of what we put out there. And I think that we are a great example for law enforcement agencies that are struggling. And I know that I'm walking into this, with a blessing for sure. I'm not going to say, but I have been through very difficult times, and I have been a part of making change. So I know that it can be done.
That's great. Well, thank you again for your time, Chief. I highly encourage you to go increase their followership at their Facebook page. And when this comes out, we'll tag it in all the clips and stuff that we put from it. Chief, thank you so much again. And just stay with me after I close it out. So
Absolutely.
thanks. All right.